Over this weekend, I've received several messages and I've seen comments on the original video that a content creator within the Star Citizen community named SaltEMike has reacted to one of my latest uploads regarding Star Citizen MI2 Starry-Eyed for this game in the comments section. Those are videos where I do a deep dive in what you guys actually sound off in the comments below. I think that's an important aspect to our conversation here. I always try to give you guys as much attention as you end up giving me, and then I think that's only fair at the end of the day. But I thought it'd be fun today to sit down and kind of jump into some of SaltEMike's points about the game, about my perspective, give you guys, for those of you who are enjoying the Star Citizen content, some more information just about how I approach video games, both as a content creator, as a father, but namely as a gamer, both with this sense of hopium that I think is a good, healthy thing to have. And some people have said that it's the fact that I have kids that in and of itself kind of lends to the joy that I get out of video games, but also that I'm not naive to that people are going to be frustrated, because I've been hearing people kind of warn me off this game for a long time. But I'm glad I didn't heed those warnings, and I'm glad I've been able to step into this universe. And so that's what this video is going to be about. I've got lots of different clips. We're going to play them in order. There's not like that way. Ideally, we can kind of get the thought process and the evolution from Salty, and then just kind of go from there. So we'll play the clip. I'll give kind of some additional information response. And if you guys enjoy this, it'd be great if you hit that like button. That's probably the best and most easiest way to support the content and on the channel here. Also, before we dive in, just as a call to action, if you guys could really help me out, I have an Instagram. I've been challenged by my fellow stand-up comedians. By the way, I do stand-up comedy, to grow my Instagram following, which you guys have already pushed me over to 200. I just really never was using Instagram, but all the comedians say you gotta be on it. And so if you guys use Instagram, you want to help me out, the top link in the description of this video will be huge for me if you guys go give that a follow, and I appreciate you. You'll see video game content, some of my stand-up, which is on the more dark and adult side, so not safe for work, but hope you guys enjoy it. It's a fun thing that I get to do, and I really hope that one day maybe you get to see me in a show, or I get to see you at a show. I got a couple coming up, and I try to announce those dates well in advance. So keep the feed up for December. We got a couple shows coming up, maybe. All right. All of that is long enough for an intro. Let's send it over to Mike here and see what he's got to say first, and we'll just keep this ball rolling.
Let's jump into the next video. This is from a channel I've never seen before, called Ginger Prime.
Bum-ba-da-bum.
And it is titled Star Citizen MI2 Starry-Eyed, the comment section. Uh-oh. So I think that they've been like, I think this is just one of those channels that just found Star Citizen and is like, yo, this is incredible. And they don't actually know, the history or whatever.
Yeah, facts. I think you nailed it right out of the gate.
And then everybody is telling them what it's about, I think. Are they a WoW guy? I have no idea. I don't know anything about this, so let's just dive in and see what it's all about. It's a fairly long video, so let me link it to you first, and then we'll link it to you at the end as well. Okay.
So thank you so much, Salty, and thank you everybody who's hanging out for this video specifically. I really, this was also an introduction to Salty as a part of that. Now, I also got reached out from Space Tomato. We're going to do a collab coming up here in the coming days. And this in and of itself, I think, is interesting in part for the course, because I've seen this happen within multiple gaming communities. And one of the things that I always try to be absolutely clear is that especially if you're on the bitter side of the Star Citizen development process, like, I get where you're coming from. I just can't go back in time and share in that level of frustration with you. So I have to approach everything like I do with the game right now. Like, this is how it is in 2023 going into 2024. Who knows what will happen next? I think that's kind of a part of the excitement, and what they're trying to build here in this game is absolutely insane. But yeah, this was a great introduction, I think, to Salty. So if you guys haven't followed him, I'll put a link to his reaction in this video. He was so kind to do the same for mine, so thank you guys so much for that, especially for those who actually do go and watch the source material. It ends up being a huge benefit to the content creator. Generally speaking, reaction content has a diminishing return, so I try to keep it limited to the channel in and of itself, based off of requests and permission from the reactee in this case. Let's go ahead and to our second clip here. Keep sounding off. That's pretty much the only requirement. So
this is actually a pretty good idea. Should I do a because I always take the comment section and post it on Discord. I feel like that would be like a really good video for the React channel, actually, is just taking a bunch of the comments from the comment section, putting them into like a photo album or something, and then just comment on all the comments.
Thank you guys so much for being here. And right out the gate, I'd have to say, Salty, like, this is and something you should do. Now, personally speaking, the reason I end up doing it is that I feel it's a good reciprocal way of having that conversation continue and to highlight positive and negative points. One of the things that I see, you see it with YouTubers, like, you can hyper focus in on the negative, but that doesn't mean that you should avoid it, at least in my perspective. So it gives me the opportunity to highlight kind of the good, the bad, the ugly from what people are actually saying. Because one of the things I found as a content creator back earlier on is I would quote somebody, but I wouldn't show it. Or I look at something and somebody's talking about something over on Reddit, and I'd like, oh, that's an interesting topic. And people would assume that that was the position that I was taking. And so I tried essentially, in a way, source whether it's a good idea, a bad idea, etc., to show that it is a real thought and not some, something I'm trying to drum up just for the quote unquote content or the attention, because that's what this is. It's an attention driven economy when it comes to content creation. And so, yeah, I think you should do it. I highly encourage that, because that's just my general philosophy, because I also enjoy hanging out and reading everybody's comments. Maybe that means I'm broken in some way, but it definitely is a lot of fun. Let's get into our third clip here and see what he's got to say next. You're perfectly fine not to like my approach, but
yeah, I mean, that's your choice. Like, your video is whatever you want your videos to be. If you want to be toxically positive, that's on you, right? But if you never want to share any of the negativity because you don't feel that makes a good video, that's your own prerogative, man. And people like Dr. John are always trying to force the negativity on people. Even somebody like myself doesn't really force or want to force the negativity on people. You want to be over there and, by yourself and having a great time and not say anything bad about Star Citizen ever, even though that there's very obviously bad things with it. You do you. But don't give me shit if I say that something is bad, because it doesn't invalidate whatever you are doing over there. Okay, whatever you're doing in your positive land, in happy land, doesn't invalidate what my feelings either. And that's the difference. Is I'm not sitting here saying that you're supposed to feel some sort of way. My guess is that over time he'll be like, damn, there's not a lot to this game. Maybe he's coming in at a really good time and they'll actually start pumping stuff out with Squadron 42 being feature complete. He might be really, really lucky in this regard. But for the people who've been around since 2012, there's obviously some lacking things here for a lot of us. And it is what it is.
So there's a lot to unpack in this clip specifically, starting with kind of the toxically positive. The thing I keep trying to hit home, and and that's where I sometimes feel like am I coming off beating a dead horse here? Namely, is that I'm not against critique at all. I think critique is a very good, valid thing that you can offer games and game developers specifically. But the question ends up being is that it falls into the category of authority. Do I have the authority to call out the negative of this game? I haven't really experienced it. And this is just me saying, like, here's what I've experienced. To go in and just like, you might feel like I lose credibility off this. I'm fine if somebody plays a game for 5 minutes and puts out a review, as long as they tell me, hey, I played this game for 5 minutes and here are my thoughts. Because it sets the correct context to what they're talking about. if I'm looking for somebody who just had that and I just barely touched the game, that's, okay, that's interesting. That's where you come from. What happens is that when the function of time happens, there's going to be a point where maybe I'm sitting here like, well, there's not much I can really do in the game right now. But for me, when it comes down to it, I do not at this moment have any authority to try and pretend like I've been here the whole time. I haven't. And I think to try and like go in that direction doesn't work. It doesn't mean that also that I'm just going to sit here and all of a sudden share that level of frustration. I can't have that experience as somebody who backed the game in 2012 has had, and nor I think would I wish that on anybody else, right? Anybody who's like, hey, I'm going to step into this game when it's released, and it's like, well, if you haven't been here the whole time, that's some next level gatekeeping BS that every gaming community has. We all have those people in any game, and it's kind of like I suffered, so you've got to suffer too. Like I can understand that as a kind of a forging somebody in fire and a kind of building a brotherhood, in this regards. But I think when it comes to the games, etc., like, I'm not going to sit here and lean into the negative, even though I know that does so much better as part of the algorithm. I'm not going to do that because that's just not, I think, good content. That's not a good conversation to have. I'm open and always going to listen to everybody's frustrations because it gives me a good perspective on where some people fall within the community, but that's going to be something interesting. Now, who knows what's going to happen in the long run. I do get a vibe that, like Salty is like, I'm just another content creator kind of like rolling through like a tumbleweed within kind of the gaming space. And I wouldn't describe it like that. It's that, I do variety content here with a focus in on RPGs as kind of the base thing that I'm usually passionate about. And when it sits down to play a video game, I like to experience it. I like to really understand it so I can speak to it both as a software developer, but also as a gamer. And to the kind of the final point where like, I have no problem if somebody wants to be critical or negative to this game or any game for that matter. I think it's just about setting the correct context. What is your relationship with it? How did you arrive to that point? What journey have you been on? That's what I think is the most interesting thing, not the conclusion that somebody arrives at. And I hope you can understand at least my thought perspective on that, because I think it's an important one to have. I don't care what your opinion is. How did you come to that? What was the journey like? And that's where I like to do a deeper dive into the conversation, into each game, into each creator, into every gamer's. All right, enough of that. Let's move on to the next one.
Oh God, here we go. He's a software dev too, so he's I'm worried now. Is he going to be like, I understand all of this?
I'm not going to. So one of the things that's interesting, because I do understand software development, life cycle, the ongoing support, the amount of time it takes to get things done, and the things that can go wrong. But that's not to say that the messaging is also a part of the problem. I've worked in companies. I've hired people out of actually the gaming industry. I hired a lot of really great people out of the Borderlands team. They were kind of frustrated. But when it comes to game development specifically, like there's so many things that go wrong, but like even in my own company, there's messaging, quote unquote, like, oh, we're going to do this, or like what people say in press releases and how they communicate. That is a separate thing that can completely go astray. One of the things that I find the most terrifying is when development is open and honest, because gamers are going to take what you say as the rule, and when the realization that might not be possible, it ends up feeling like they're taking things away when it was just an idea on a board somewhere. And when it came down to it, it's like, this doesn't actually work, or this isn't going to, work with the technology that we have available. There's all kinds of reasons, and I'm not excusing the messaging. I honestly say, like, when the most times I see people frustrated is at messaging, and that's why usually development happens in secret So all of those problems can be found. But in a crowdsourced game, when it's like, come along on this journey, we even saw it when they were talking about doing the Anthem 2.0 rebuild or whatever, being transparent. Here's the information. Oh, by the way, we're canceling this project. You know, like, oh gosh, like it ends up setting up expectations that are near impossible to ever live up to. So yeah, like I speak to this from a knowledge, perspective, from an experience perspective, but also I also understand it from a gamer's perspective, and with Star Citizen specifically as something that's crowd-funded, that has that, that connection. It ends up being a bigger problem and a bigger headache, and so I can understand where people get frustrated, but I wish that I could put everybody into the development world, so all of a sudden you're like, oh, I see when they said this, that they thought it was going to take this much time, that, things didn't exist and they had to like create it from scratch. Like there's so many things that it's, that's what I spend a lot of my job on doing. Like, how long is this going to take? And I was like, well, this might take anywhere from, 16 hours to 16 days. Like, we're going to give you a wide range on this one just because it might interact with some other systems. We just have to dive into it and get back to you on it. I'm going to keep drinking my water throughout this because my voice is failing. But yeah, I get it from both sides, but I'm going to definitely defend the developers, because where a lot of people put their focus in on, and they kind of lump the devs, the hardworking people, in on the front lines there, with the marketing team and the leadership, where I'm like, focus more on the leadership, right? That's where I think a lot of the problems begin and end from my experience. Kind of review of me as a content creator. There's nothing, ifs, ands, or buts about it. We all have different strokes for different folks, different ways of 100%. Approaching these things together. But anyway, we'll continue on, because
I know I'm obviously reacting to his videos, but I'm never going to yuck his yum, right? Like his type of content is going to be his type of content.
I hate that phrase so much. That's why I wanted to include it here in this clip.
I guess I just kind of did. I always get worried because the people who are software devs, they start typing and they're like, it's an alpha and blah, 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 and all this stuff makes sense. And like completely ignoring the fact that, they may have been like server meshing 2020, answer the call 2016, and right, like that's like it's kind of hard to ignore some of the things that are not software development related, right?
Fair pushback. That's that. Yeah, so not understanding what the the call back in 2016. Obviously, there's been a lot of time that has passed with the development of this game, and with the CitizenCon, and with with the Squadron 42 like on the horizon. There are things that I'm like, yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting decade that this game is, and it's one of the things that I think you immediately feel with Star Citizen is just how both insane it is in its scale and its scope. And one of the things about that is just because something's big doesn't mean it's like better, right? But to try and see if they can't fill that in, to really kind of give players that sandbox, that freedom, it could be that, that whole new wave, something again that no one's doing from a company perspective. The risk in and of itself is too great. The economical cost to do this is too great. And the fact is that this is something that might happen, and it could all fall apart at the end of the day. But I want to be hopeful, that we can see something truly unique come into the gaming space. But I do not think we're close to where we are. But as far as it goes, things take more time, and that's again back to that communication. The fact that they're sharing this and communicating this and they're doing those things, those seems like big misses. They withdraw that from that trust bank, as opposed to depositing into the trust bank. It sounds like Star Citizen has withdrawn a lot of that. And so the longer you've been on that and the longer they've been making those withdrawals, I get it. You might be like, the bank account's kind of low. It might be even in the negative right now, but I'm still sitting here. For me, I'm, just like, I'm willing to kind of risk, some money on something. Especially
How much money, Ginger? How much money have we risked? I am very curious.
So an easy answer to this is just the base game. However, I've been perusing the shop for various different ships, and they obviously range in prices. How much money am I willing to risk on this game? Right now, I would put it now, like I don't have it in my budget today. If you guys are curious, I do share my stats. In fact, I do owe you guys my latest stat video for YouTube. But generally speaking, I make roughly around $1,000 a month across my different channels. If you guys don't know, I have a comedy channel, I have a New World channel, I have a Blue Protocol channel, I have a couple other channels that I don't promote. And all in all, they bring in collectively a little over $1,000. My editor, Jack, if he wants to say hi, he's incredible. But he takes that's $900 out of that. So generally speaking, I make $100 of, I guess, profit. And then I pay taxes on that. So it's like a month. And that gives me basically some spending money for video games. And so I end up having had to do a lot of charity recently. And not that that's a bad thing. I think charity is a really good thing. I just don't like to tell people about it, but it's important to the conversation. So here we go. And so I haven't had any extra spending money in terms of video games. That will hopefully maybe change this coming Christmas, or maybe I'll just ask my wife for a little bit more wiggle room in the budget for video games. But I would say, when I look at the most I've spent on video games, I think Final Fantasy 14 comes to mind, with trips to FanFest, hotels, and all. When I factor in all the cost of being in that game, in that world for over 13 years, I think it would easily chalk up to $10,000 over the span of 13, 14 years. And so while I'm not committing 10 grand to this project today, I think right now my upper limit will be $1,000, and then I want to see what happens from there. And the reason it ends up being is that I'm willing to risk that. If nothing ever comes out of it, okay, I lost more money on crypto in this regards. What a crap that was. I'd rather, and whether this is the same thing or not, I would rather essentially kind of contribute to something that I think we all want to see happen. And that's just kind of where I'm at. So right now, total in the pot 45. We'll see how December looks in terms of the Google payout. So like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. Watched lots of videos if you want to help out with that, especially the long form stuff. The short form stuff it just eats my lunch, but it's it's an experiment we're running, and we'll continue to run that throughout the new year. But anyway, that's where we're at. Hopefully that's a good answer. I know people have spent a lot, but I think after you spend $1,000, you get it part of a concierge status, and that's kind of intriguing to me.
And what it was starting to do was create these pockets of the Star Citizen community that were saying, this is how the game is. And then other ones saying, no, that's how the game is. And then other people saying, no, that's how the game is. And nobody actually knew what the game was. And then finally, CitizenCon this year, they were kind of laying out a little bit more of what the game was, and all those arguments can just finally die. Some of them at least. But yeah, so for Ashes, will it live up to the hype? Does any game ever live up to its hype? Of course not. But do I look at Ashes and go, this is pretty similar to some games that I like? I think I might enjoy it. Yeah.
Live up to the hype is also something that I think is just this almost in a way like a religious belief system within gamers, because the data shows us that hype is this thing, kind of a moment in time, and then it moves on to the next thing. People are chasing those highs, the highs of the excitement of being in a thing. So will Ashes live up to its hype? There is oh man, I think it's going to go through the same cycle that all MMOs go through. A massive amount of interest right at the start, people play it, and then essentially they go back to doing whatever, and there's nothing wrong with it, but that's when you see the base community really kind of establish itself. And then all you need is that constant invitation, hey, here's a new update, hey, here's a new expansion, hey, here's the new this, maybe come back and check out what's going on. You got to get those hooks in those people though. Same thing I've been saying about New World this whole time is yeah, the expansion is really good. Like, I like what they've done. There'll be another expansion, and there'll be another expansion, and they'll keep doing this because that's the thing you have to do. You have to beat that drum so loud and so often that it does drown out the people who are like, the game's dead, because it lost a huge percentage of its player base, which all games do. It's, hey, this game's a success and now we're mad at it. It's like, okay, guys, chill the F out. But yeah, like, I'm not worried about, I don't know. I don't chase hype. I think it ends up being more hassle than it is. Sometimes hype catches me on something I'm excited about, and I'll hit a trend, which will help the videos out for a little while. But being that I don't stick to one game as a dedicated coverage, I'll break things off onto different channels if I end up feeling like I can add a lot of value to the coverage of the game. Namely, try not to make things over sensationalized and dramatic and doom filled. Because I just get fatigued of that, and I get enough of that from the real world stuff. Anyway, let's continue. Something that we can't experience in this lifetime, the far reaches of space, exploration, and so much more. So,
I mean, we've heard that plenty of times. These guys are doing things bigger than anybody else. But if you're saying you understand the economics of it, and then you look at the way that they've funded their game, but he hasn't, right? Because he's new and hasn't seen the way they have funded their game. I don't think he truly understands why people are upset about it. Because every person who's typing in his comments angrily most likely feels like Star Citizen took advantage of them. And guess what? They did. And I don't think anybody can come out here and say that's not the truth. CIG absolutely took advantage of the generosity of their backers, have continuously sold more and more and more pieces of the game, things that initially they said that they would never do, lifetime insurance, certain ships, so on and so forth, right? People feel like they've been taken advantage of. Of course, yeah, the playable now when it's not half the backers can't even log into the game, right? Bunch of examples of this that Ginger never had to live through. So you can't blame him for not understanding those things. And I'm never going to. And he shouldn't, and nobody should sit here and tell him that this is how it used to be, so you should hate this game. Right? My expectations for anybody who's coming in now, unless CIG really steps up their development, they're going to figure it out on their own. They're going to figure out on their own that doing things that nobody ever did before at the scale of the game are going to realize that doing things that nobody did before was probably for a good fucking reason up to this point, because it's boring and the game is empty and there's not a lot to do, right? And they'll figure that out on their own, or they won't. But what I'm not going to do is tell somebody who's enjoying the game now, because they came in at the right time and I didn't, that they should hate the game. Why should he hate the game? That's stupid. Okay? Now, I'm going to sit here and go through my memories of things, because he is defending the project on things that are indefensible sometimes, right? But he'll figure that out on his own.
So there's a couple points that I want to make with this clip, because the idea here, I used the economics behind it, and then he went into the funding. He heard economics and then immediately thought about how the game's funded. Those would be two different things entirely. I don't have a history or understand fully how the game was funded. I know it was crowdsourced and they've done all these different things, and that's it. Like, what specific things? No idea. Still gathering that information up. But what do I mean by economics? I mean the greater function of how things get made. And within gaming, we've seen, and this is one of the things where the shift with mobile gaming, it's exploded gaming. Gaming is no longer the niche that it once was when I was growing up. But with that, you see so many different things kind of come about. What do I mean by this? Well, let's look at MMOs as a good comparison. The rise of the theme park MMO, the success of World of Warcraft, let's see if I can get this out, together alone cemented a set of standards that, if not achieved, the market does not really support. And gamers will say they will support, they will do X, Y, or Z, but that doesn't guarantee that that in fact is going to happen. And that means, when I understand the economics behind it, I understand that what is existing or trying to come into existence here hasn't, because there hasn't been either a pathway or a big enough market to support that vision financially. And that's the cost, the risk, and all of that. So that's what the economics is. It's not how the game is funded. It's how games generally get made overall, and the market and the big companies that are less willing to actually risk these things on these ideas, because they aren't the only ones that have ever thought of this as an idea. But when it comes down to it, it's like there just isn't a big enough player base that could financially make what we need to do to make this come into existence a reality. Otherwise, you would have seen the big companies do it. But because there isn't that, that forerunner, you don't end up seeing a lot. That's one of the things I like about Nintendo. They'll do stuff. They'll just throw stuff against the wall just for the like, let's see if this is fun. And if it is, everybody else copies them. Otherwise, it just kind of goes away, right? And that's kind of what I'm getting at. Now, the funding and essentially, yes, the idea that, like telling somebody they shouldn't enjoy this game. We've kind of talked a little bit about that already kind of throughout this video, so I don't need to like beat that dead horse in this regards, but I think it's an important aspect, and I like what he had to say about it, but I just wanted to clarify the economics versus funding. Those in my mind are two separate conversations, and so yes, that's how I think about these things. Like, it's like, well, some people say they want this thing, but then nobody shows up for that thing. Did they like talk is cheap, right? Like, what does the numbers show? That's why like sequels to movies generally do, so much better than the original, just off of marketing and name brand, even if it's a worser movie. Humans, man, we're broken. I think that's the best way to summarize that. The base game and whatnot.
Yo, he bought the $45 pack. Oh, but then he said, and whatnot. What does that mean? I was going to say, this guy is just a starter package enjoyer.
So, and the whatnot means that I am perusing the store and looking at that. We've covered that a little bit, but I just thought that was a fun thing. I'm a starter package enjoyer. Yes, that is who I am. I can't share that because I haven't been on that same time frame of a journey, right? I've been just told this game is to write this game off and never check it out. And eventually I was like, you know what? With all that, I'm just going to go play it for myself and make my own decision. Anyway.
Just don't put all your eggs in the basket. That would be my only recommendation as a content creator, is all of these guys come. I believe he's got a pretty big following. 75,000 subscribers, right? This came out on November 9th.
My sister's birthday.
But, it's not doing incredible on views or anything.
Yeah, it's a comment section video.
And my thing would be, just don't put all your eggs in this basket, because a lot of guys with bigger audiences from other games come over here and then they obsess with it. And then gradually the game does become more and more difficult to make content for, right? Because there's only so many things you could do, and there's only so many things you can explore without having done them over and over and over again, right? And then without proper progression systems, which is why I think he's coming in at such a good time. If they actually deliver in the next year or so on the stuff from CitizenCon, he's going to have a really, really good time. He was a New World and Final Fantasy creator. Cool. I'm surprised I never caught any of his New World stuff. Maybe I did, because I watch a lot of New World content. And New World feels amazing now. So I wonder why he's, going back and forth. But yeah, just consistently making content is very difficult. Live streaming the game, not as bad, but YouTube, much more difficult.
Let's move on. So what's interesting about this is that obviously he looks at the subscriber numbers, and the low reviews on a comment section video. Generally speaking, as somebody who likes to cover the video game news, I usually make a lot of guides. I don't ever feel like I have a huge, what I would call an attachment rate, where people are like, oh, I got to know what Brian wants to know about this. And those who do will just reach out directly and say, hey, have you seen this? You know, or what are your thoughts? And then we make videos about those various things. As somebody who spent a lot of time in the Final Fantasy XIV world, and then essentially branched out, retired from Final Fantasy XIV. And yes, I have a New World channel that's just dedicated to New World. New World Central is what it's called. I've got thoughts about, you know, the continued evolution of these sub-channels that I run. But yes, I've had a lot of success. A lot of people have taken a chance and hit that subscribe button, but that doesn't mean they come back for every video. And I don't actually really expect them to. And so it ends up just being a variable of like what content is coming up and what am I covering. And I'll make videos that are what I call subscriber purge videos. And I'll make videos that aren't just generally going to do very well. But that's still the video that I want to make. So I go ahead and make it anyway, AKA the comment section, right? Like I know generally those do not, like bring in like the 10,000 views. It'd be great if they did. In fact, if you guys enjoy the content, and be sure to check out the rest of it here, because there's I think a lot of really good stuff out there, that I've made so far, and people seem to really enjoy it. But yeah, like I don't really obsess about the numbers all that much. The other thing that he brings up in the clip is talking about how kind of these roving bands of content creators, and we see this in every game ever. Like, hey, what's the new popular thing? Or I'm looking for something, to make content around for a short period of time and move on. I tend to kind of like try to set roots, but I believe that variety is one of the things that keeps you from being bitter. Because I think it's great to compare and contrast games, see what people are doing that are different. And so I haven't touched, Star Citizen, but after playing Starfield, I was like, yeah, I really want some more space game. And Star Citizen, I was like, I already purchased this in excitement for that. But then there's also No Man's Sky. But then there's also, I bought Starborn 2, which is an indie dev game that I'm looking forward to playing at some point. I got a problem. I buy games. When am I going to have time, right? Like, where is this magical time coming from? But I see what he's talking about, especially with Star Citizen, but it applies to every gaming community out there. And the bigger creators will come in, they'll do their thing, and then they'll leave, with some rare exception where they stick around. But as somebody who, for me, like, I think variety is important. I tried to have a common theme with my coverage. But yeah, when we like all the eggs in the one basket, it's like, that's why I talk about it in terms of risk. I think of like, this is something that I want to see exist. The developer in me is like, the difficulty of this thing is pretty astronomical. Here's my contribution, right? Here's what I'm willing to try and chip in to see if something cool can really come out and play. And if it doesn't happen, okay, well, at least we gave it a shot. That's my perspective. I'm sure we can disagree on and agree to disagree on that one, but yeah, we'll leave it at that. And again, small wins, right? That in and of itself, I actually am like, the more I've learned about Star Citizen over the last couple of weeks, just kind of getting caught up, just trying to understand. And when
Dude, literally only has an Anvil C8 Pisces. Okay, how long until he fills out this screen? How long until he's got 6 kids, right? Oh, it's the tutorial. That's right.
Weeks, like, yeah. So it is the tutorial. But I have, I think, 2 ships overall. I know that's not a big number. How long until it takes me to fill this out? Yes, I do have 6 kids. I also have a mountain of nephews and nieces, and so much. So yes, financially, like when we talk about it, it's like, this is something that I feel like I can start to kind of chip away at. And add to my collection over the course of the next year. That's the time frame, right? So in the next year, I could reasonably, depending on the videos. I know January and February for content ends up being on the lower end, and It is what it is. It's not your job at all. But if you guys want to help get me there faster, I'm not asking for members. I'm not asking for donations. Just check out the videos, hit the like button, and enjoy, especially if you have like YouTube Premium, which is like enjoy it all ad free, have fun. And if you want to ad block me, that's perfectly fine too. I go to work and I like that because it gives me the ability to be as honest with you as I want to, like, as I can be, as I think is needed, right? Where I don't, like if you don't watch the next video because you're like, oh, I don't agree with what he said, like my kids, they're fine. Like they're still gonna wake up and have food and clothing and shelter. So it doesn't rely on this. This is something that I get a lot of joy out of. And so, yeah, if the money does improve, obviously I talked about my expenses earlier in, yeah, maybe that will happen faster. But we'll just wait and see ultimately what happens. I don't have grand expectations. I have just the fact that I like that this hobby covers itself, and then I have a kick-ass editor who allows me to push out as much content as I do. Because I like talking about video games, and I'm not planning on stopping anytime soon. Perfectly fine. I'm happy making the video.
I mean, I really think you should. He's already explained it twice that like I might not be the content creator for you. Reading this is what making YouTube videos does to your brain. Is like you start to, I don't know, I deal with the same thing, dude. You start to focus on the negative comments that just don't matter. Like, who cares, right? Move on, mute that person, and never hear from them again, right?
So it's not necessarily anything that makes you a content creator. It's something a part of our human evolution, that we will hyperfixate and focus in on the negative, because that's essentially kind of about survival. So you have to train yourself to look into the positive, and then algorithms enhance that because that's what gets a lot of traction. That's what gets engagement. So you have to be like so incredibly positive or so incredibly negative. Having a reasonable conversation is more for long form content, and it has a smaller niche audience in the long run, because people just want to be like either really upset or really, really happy by something. So I think it's more of a human aspect of it all. So I like to focus in on both. I like to highlight, especially other opinions, in this regards. I think that's a part of what I like to do. And that's something that we're going to keep doing here. And hopefully you guys enjoy it. But yeah, I do stand by, like, I might not be your content creator. Like I've got things that I share publicly, that I'm passionate about. And they aren't generally well received within the online space. And I'm talking about what I call the cultural Marxist, viewpoint that's just permeated throughout the internet, and just how much pain and suffering that causes and has caused and will cause. But a lot of people also refer to that as woke, and people are like, oh, they're not the same thing. And it's like, oh, you're so sweet, you innocent flower. But when you kind of realize it and you kind of start seeing it, you're like, okay, these are the same thing. So I have no problem scaring people away with my anti-Marxist viewpoints. And yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean I get a lot of friends, and that's perfectly fine. So I'll keep talking about it, and we cover it more in Class Dismiss, which is going to be actually its own channel pretty soon. So hopefully you guys enjoy all of that.
Okay, so these are the people. So this is there's a base of Star Citizen viewers that are very similar to Souls games. So you guys familiar with like I'm playing these Souls games for the first time ever, and people will watch those videos religiously, watching people suffer in Souls games. Star Citizen is very similar, but without the suffering part so much. Obviously, there's some suffering in the game, but I do find that anybody coming from another game, finding Star Citizen for the first time and enjoying it, these people come out of the woodworks for these channels and watch them religiously for a while. I can remember there was a streamer in the space on Twitch that it was the same concept. Then it was like Morph. Then it was level cap, then it was Ollie, and then so on and so on and so on, right? The people who come out and are like, yo, I love this game. This is the greatest game ever. Everyone's like, yo, I love this guy. And then as those people play the game, they're like, yo, this game's got some real problems. I'm going to start sharing my opinions on it. And then they turn on them.
So absolutely true. In fact, he named the Soul series. It's also, you can see it heavily within any game community. Final Fantasy is the one that I have a lot of personal experience with in this regards. When it comes to New World, it's like everybody was just hating on New World. So anybody coming in and be like, yeah, this is good, this isn't, that isn't that good, or negative, it's like, oh man, at least you're not saying the game is dead. That's where I think New World has been like such a breath of fresh air in terms of content creation, because it's been, so many people wrote it off, and it's like, I think it's got an opportunity. I think it's a contender. I think it's got a chance. And hell, New World has been my MMO of 2023. Like, I don't think any MMO has done it better. Maybe ESO, or Guild Wars. I think they have an expansion that came out this year or is on its way. One of the two. I love Guild Wars, and I always feel, bummer that I never give it enough time. But that is going to be what it is in this case. But yeah, you see this all the time with content creators. They just kind of hop from thing to thing, and then they experience it, and then they get that kind of attention from it, and then they either have an opinion like, oh, okay, now I'm not so keen on it, and then they most likely move on. But I always kind of worry about it from an authenticity, because like, oh, the views have dried up, I guess it's time to find the next thing. And if this is something you're trying to do to provide for your family, I understand, and I'm not judging you for it, but I'm like, oh man, like, have a job, and I don't know. When people talk about it, I go, it's a great hobby. This is such a fun hobby to share video games with you guys, and not have to sit here and stress about it or chase the trends, which is what people do, and we all know they do it. And I'm not judging them for it. You got to play the game that you want to play, I guess, in this case. But I'd rather play games personally. Come back, and in a way that, and what I've argued for the longest time is, like, in order for that to truly happen, it has to do something that nobody else can or is doing. It has to offer that.
But he's so right. He's so right. But what, in my opinion at least, what it's offering isn't it. Like, the scale is good, but does the scale mean anything if you don't do anything with it? Right? So yes, Star Citizen is doing something that nobody's ever done before. It's insane. It's wild. It's cool. But if there's nothing to do, what was the point of making the scale in the first place? So that's what's so exciting about CitizenCon, is it sounds like they're trying to fill out those things, but we'll have to see.
The scale and the scope, I think, is going to be something that is going to be a challenge as they build out the game. And this is, I think, going to be a challenge because of the sandbox nature of the game. If you want to hit a kind of a bigger mass appeal, you in a way have to kind of really guide people through. You got to give them that. Now, Squadron 42 could literally be that answer, right? Like with that single player story driven narrative, to where like, hey, play this, and then it's like, okay, yeah, now if you want to go live in that universe, as a character, not like through the story, here is your opportunity to do so. I think that's the most intriguing to see. But I I love the sandbox, and I want to see it really thrive, because like my best memories are there, right? The best times in an MMO have been when we're kind of making our own fun and not necessarily kind of following the carrot on the stick, even though the carrot on the stick is the thing that gets more people to try out the game. So it is a tough spot to be in for it. We got 2 more clips here. That's my game time. Like, I guess I'm just gonna have this update the game. I might as well go do something else. So,
bro, this game is 90 fucking gigs. What is he talking about?
So this is one thing I thought I would kind of take a bit. I talked about how I was playing Forza Horizon, and it had like a 30 gig update. I wasn't talking about Star Citizen. I was just saying that, like, when my game time is limited as a parent, I might have 30 minutes. I might have an hour to play a game. And if 20 minutes of that is spent patching said game, I just move on. And so it's all about the path of least resistance for gamers. And that's something that plagues the sandbox MMO, because somebody might not want to invest that amount of time into it, and thus essentially kind of just move on to whatever just kind of gives them that dopamine hit. As unsatisfying as it is in the long run, it still fits the need now, right? So it's kind of like, you know, hey, you can have this this Jolly Rancher right now, and it's, oh, I like Jolly Ranchers. This is amazing. You eat the Jolly Rancher, like, that was great. Or you could have this like incredible steak and lobster dinner with all, like, everything that you can imagine, or imagine your own like favorite food. Obviously, I'm very hungry right now. Those things are like, you know, oh, okay, so I can have this sweet, you know, hit now, and it's gonna taste great, and I'm gonna really enjoy it. Not sponsored by Jolly Ranchers, by the way. And or like I could delay that, and I could wait, and eventually it's going to pay itself off. Not everybody's got that patience, and I mean, this is just human nature, right? That's why there's like people have it over $1 trillion in credit card debt. Like they're losing everything, and they're doing so, you know, feeling like, you know, it's the only option, and it's not. Anyhow, that's a soapbox for another soapbox. Let's jump into our final clip, and thank you guys so much if you've made it all the way to this part of the video. We're almost done. I guess it's a perfect time for a secret call out. Sound off with your favorite candy. You know, in this case, I brought up Jolly Ranchers. It's not my favorite candy. I love gummy worms. I don't know why I didn't use gummy worms. And when I here in a couple years, once I finish with my full-on weight loss journey and keeping off the weight, I'm gonna get me some gummy worms, so stay tuned. I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, sound off with your favorite candy in the comments with secret call out, and we'll have some fun. All right, let's dive into the last clip here. Check out other videos on the channel. You can always check out the playlist for the comment section if you're curious, as we do deep dives into your comments from time to time. And it's a big part of why I love being a YouTuber, is reading y'all's comments and talking with y'all about it. So
I can't say I agree, and I think he's experiencing what I experienced too, man. The negative comments come to the top. He touched on 2 of them. But yeah, I really like this guy. And again, I think that what I said earlier really needs to sink into some of you guys, your heads, is just because somebody's coming in now and didn't experience all the horrible things you may have experienced within Star Citizen doesn't mean you need to try to bring them down and their enjoyment down to your level. They're never going to experience Answer the Call 2016. They're never going to experience waiting a year for a patch, and then, you know, constantly doing updates on when the patch is coming every week, but nothing to show for it. He may never experience, he will, but you know, some really, really kind of FOMO and malicious ship sale, right? But he may experience those things again if they do them again, but the idea here is he hasn't yet, and there's no reason to bring him down for that. Like, just let the dude have fun, and he'll see eventually. You know, that's pretty much how I've handled these types of creators that come into the Star Citizen spaces. They'll either figure it out, or they'll, you know, remain high on the copium, and they'll all find their place and be happy in their own way, and that'll be that, you know? So, not bad, but I really, really did enjoy the video. I think he's got a really good head on his shoulders as far as the game goes, and, you know, he's obviously in software development, so he understands it from that perspective, but he seems to just be enjoying it. He also seems to be very interested in other games, too. And that would be my only advice for him, is just don't put all your eggs in this basket yet, because it doesn't deserve them just yet, right? But eventually, we all hope to put all of our eggs in this basket, because I think all of us are really rooting for CIG and want the game to be great.
So what's interesting about this is that I think I do agree with the idea, because like we talked about putting the eggs in the basket, and it's like that's something I tend to avoid, namely because I think variety is the spice of life, but I crave it. Like I think in every one of the gamers, especially for MMO fans, it's like we all are just like wanting that thing, that experience that, you know, it's almost hard to quantify with words. The English language isn't strong enough to really kind of fit it in. And so, yeah, like if the game ends up being what it, you know, is trying to be, you know, yeah, like there's a part of me that wants to, yeah, then it's like, cool, let's go all in, baby. You know, it's like, guys, that's where we're living in the stars now. But I still think that variety is a way of kind of helping kind of alleviate that, and social media and Discord and things like that have all made that much easier so that you can transcend one game's community and go into and build out like something that is, you know, ideally fun, but sometimes we've seen it go sideways. All that being said, is if you guys are interested, I will be setting up kind of a Star Citizen area within the Discord. Links are in the description. Again, call out for the Instagram challenge would be huge if you guys don't mind helping me out for that. I'm really glad that SaltEMike watched this, and I thought I liked his point of view on that, because one of the things I would say, like kind of to give some grace to those who are bitter and frustrated, like I don't think it's every one of them is about trying to share that like negativity. It's just about education. It's just about trying to say like, this is where I'm coming from. It's more like that's information that they want to give to set the context around the conversation. Like, I was there for this, I was there for this. Not necessarily to convert me to their viewpoint, but to have hopefully a deeper conversation around this game and you know, these kind of development projects, right? For right or wrong, you know, here we are. It's 2023. Right or wrong, the game is still kicking. Right or wrong, things might be on the horizon. I think that's an exciting thing. I think that's an exciting place to be, and I think it's a perfect way to end this video. Especially as my voice seems to want to fail, and it's late, so I think I should get some sleep. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed. Hopefully I'll see you in the next video, but until then, take care.